Hey everyone! The 40th anniversary of the Mount St. Helens eruption in 1980 is just a couple of weeks away. Is it hard for anyone else to believe that it's been 40 years already since that massive eruption took place? It's amazing that it's already been that long. I feel very grateful that we were able to go visit Mount St. Helens and the National Monument last year and just see how in 40 years trees are starting to come back, life is starting to come back. In the summer there's wildflowers everywhere in this area that was just so devastated. It's going to take a long time for that forest to come back as thick and beautiful as it was. And it's amazing to see the photos of before and after. So leading up to the anniversary of this eruption this year, since we can't actually go and climb on the volcanoes due to the current pandemic, I feel very, very blessed that I got my hands on this. This is a copy of Crandall and Donal Mullineaux's paper, Potential Hazards from Future Eruptions of Mount St. Helens Volcano. Rocky and Donal wrote this in 1978 after years and years of studying the volcano and exploring its slopes and learning everything they possibly could about Mount St. Helens and the way she behaves. And they put together this fantastic paper and issued it in 1978. Let me show you this fantastic picture that they have in the book of Mount St. Helens before the eruption in 1980. Hopefully you can see this. Beautiful, beautiful cone-shaped volcano. Beautiful snow on top. The Spirit Lake is at the bottom there. It's just an incredible sight. Looks quite a bit like Mount St. Helens' neighbors, Mount Adams and Mount Rainier and Mount Hood, doesn't she? So Rocky and Donald did fantastic research. They mapped out pyroclastic flows and lava flows and compositions. They determined that the volcano was very explosive. They determined where all the ashfall landed after these eruptions. They did a fantastic job, and they outlined it all here in this book. So let me read a little bit to you from the book really quick. A little bit of introduction and information that's interesting. It's fantastic to see the perspective on Mount St. Helens before the eruption in 1980 altered our view. At this point, very few people that were living had ever seen it erupt, and the last major eruption from this was in the 1800s, so nobody was alive who had seen Mount St. Helens do anything very dramatic. So we were all kind of guessing and just going by written records at that point. So let me read a little bit from this book for you. Mount St. Helens is a symmetrical volcanic cone in southwestern Washington, about 75 kilometers northeast of Portland, Oregon. Most of the visible part of the cone has been formed within the last 1,000 years, but it overlies an older volcanic center that evidently came into existence before 3,600 years ago. Mount St. Helens has had a long history of spasmodic explosive activity, and we believe it to be an especially dangerous volcano because of its past behavior and the relatively high frequency of its eruptions during the last 4,500 years. In the future, Mount St. Helens probably will erupt violently and intermittently, just as it has in the recent geologic past. And these future eruptions will affect human life and health, property, agriculture, and general economic welfare over a broad area. They go on to further examine the volcano's history and the composition of the lavas and ash that they find and where they find it. At the end of the book, they go into what to do if warning signs of an eruption occur and what to do if an eruption begins at this volcano, which they outlined very carefully here in this paper. And it's a whole nother ball of wax if we got into whether or not these were actually followed when things began to show signs that an eruption was going to occur. But they end their paper by saying, "The present dormant state of Mount St. Helens began in 1856, and no way is now known of determining when the volcano will erupt again. The volcano's behavior pattern suggests that the current quiet interval will not last as long as 1,000 years. Instead, an eruption is more likely to occur within the next 100 years, and perhaps even before the end of the century. Wow, they had no idea that less than 2 years from the publication of this paper, that Mount St. Helens would become extremely active and would erupt in a way that people hadn't seen in a very, very long time and that people did not expect. Mount St. Helens is now one of the standards that we think of when we think of a composite volcano or a stratovolcano erupting. It was very dramatic, and it shaped the way that volcanologists study volcanoes and predict future eruptions. I feel very, very lucky that I have a paper copy of this, and it's been a fascinating read. As you can tell, I really like paper copies of books and papers from the bookshelves behind me. Something about the feel of having it in your hands and the smell of the books and not staring at something on screen is very appealing to me. But if you're interested in this, they do have a free copy of this paper on the USGS's website, so take a look for it. It is called Potential Hazards from Future Eruptions of Mount St. Helens Volcano, Washington, by Rocky Crandall and Donal Mullineaux. I will put those names and the link in the comments for you so that you can go take a read. Or if you like having a paper copy like me, take a look. Sometimes these will crop up in different places on the internet, sometimes Amazon, sometimes eBay, sometimes unexpected little booksellers will have them as well. So enjoy the read and let me know what you learned from it. And if you have some memories of Mount St. Helens eruption in 1980, let me know what they are in the comments. Let's talk about them. Let's hear what your memories are from the eruption. Were you near the volcano or were you further away? Did you have ash stacking up on your cars or in your yards? I'd love to hear your stories. And make sure that you reach out to places like the Mount St. Helens Institute as well. They're collecting stories from the eruption 40 years ago, and they're sharing them with people as well to collect all these stories and memories in one place. So enjoy the read, have a wonderful rest of your week, and happy hopping.